Hi there. You're watching Reddit Confessions. Real stories, real people, real regrets. Buckle up for this one, because I never thought I'd be the kind of guy sharing this publicly. Until last night happened. There was still steam rising from the plate when she said it. Not anger, not tiredness, just emptiness. I don't feel like it. That was her entire contribution. Not even eye contact. Just the flick of a thumb on her phone screen as she scrolled through her feed, ignoring the effort, the table, the wine, the music, and me. I stood there holding two forks. Two. As if someone else was going to show up and care about this dinner I cooked for 2 hours. I stared at the charred edges of the salmon. Then at the unlit candles she didn't even notice, and said nothing. I just turned, grabbed the keys off the counter, and walked out. But before I reached the door, another voice called after me from the living room. Soft, calm, and weirdly alert. "Can I go with you?" Her sister, Ember, sitting cross-legged on the couch in an oversized hoodie, chewing the end of her pen, looking at me with a weird expression, like she'd been waiting for this moment all evening. I didn't even answer. I just opened the door and heard her slip her sandals on behind me. I know what you're thinking. This is where the drama starts. But the drama didn't start with a kiss or a fight. It started with silence. The kind of silence that makes you realize how long you've been ignored. We ended up at a gas station off Route 39. Sitting in the car with melting slushies and old country music playing from the dashboard. Ember looked over and asked me a question no one had asked in months. "Are you okay?" And you know what I said? "I don't know. Because I didn't. Because I still don't." I thought that was the worst part of my day. Realizing my own wife couldn't even fake interest in me anymore. But no, that came later. When we got home and Ember went straight to bed, I found my wife's phone buzzing with a text she didn't hear because she was too busy snoring. And yet, I read it. The sender? Delivery boy. The message? "Tell your husband you don't feel like it again tonight, I'll be there in 20. And that, my friends, was the beginning of the end. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't shout. I didn't storm into the bedroom and demand answers. That's what I wanted to do. That's what every movie, every friend, every ounce of wounded pride inside me screamed for. Instead, I just stood there staring at the screen, at that one disgusting emoji, at the timestamp, 8:46 p.m. It had been 22 minutes since she brushed me off with, "I don't feel like it." She knew he was coming. While I lit candles and plated dinner like some lovesick fool, she was timing her fake disinterest perfectly, like it was scripted, practiced, and worst of all, casual. I should have left right then and there. I should have packed a bag and taken the silence as my cue. But I didn't. I just stood in that kitchen, completely still, my hands shaking slightly, like my body knew something my heart refused to accept. You know what I did? I took a screenshot of the message. Just one. Then I set the phone back down where I found it, screen facing down, pretending I never touched it, because some twisted part of me still needed more proof. Needed the hammer to fall all the way before I let myself believe the worst. I didn't sleep. I laid on the far end of the couch, lights off, staring at the ceiling while every creak of the floorboards made my stomach twist. I kept hearing her footsteps, her hushed laugh, the clink of a glass. At some point, I must have drifted off. I woke up at 5:12 a.m. to the smell of him. Him. I don't know how to explain that, but when someone has been in your home, when their cologne lingers on the doorknob and their mud sticks to your welcome mat, you just know. The air felt used. She was already gone. Probably dropped him off at whatever convenience store corner she found him on. Her phone was back in her bag. And everything was clean, too clean. Like someone had scrubbed a crime scene and left the yellow tape rolled up in the drawer. I didn't speak to her that day. She acted like nothing happened. Talked about laundry. Asked if I could pick up oat milk. Gave me a weird side hug like she was performing marriage theater for a non-existent audience. I nodded, smiled, obeyed. But inside, I was splitting apart like damp drywall. That evening, Ember came into the kitchen while I was making toast I had no intention of eating. She leaned against the fridge, eyes tired, arms crossed, and said very quietly, "You saw it, didn't you?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. She continued, I've known for months, Brent. I didn't say anything because I thought maybe she'd snap out of it. But you deserve to know. It's not just that guy. There have been others. I felt the blood leave my face. My knees went weak, literally. I had to grip the counter to stay upright. How many? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. Ember swallowed hard. At least 3. One of them even came by the house while you were at work. I threatened to call the cops if he didn't leave. She looked ashamed, like she'd failed me too. And yet, I wasn't angry at her. I was grateful. For the first time in months, someone was honest with me. No more pretending. No more staged affection. No more, I don't feel like it. There was a long silence between us. One of those moments where everything changes but neither of you wants to acknowledge it just yet. Then she said something I'll never forget. If you want to disappear for a while, I'll go with you. You don't deserve this. And she doesn't deserve you pretending she's still the same person you married. I should have said no. But I didn't, because I was tired of being alone in a house full of lies. We left that same night. Ember packed a duffel bag in silence, and I grabbed a few clothes and my old laptop without really thinking. It wasn't some dramatic escape scene. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just 2 people quietly slipping out of a life that had grown too loud with lies. I left a note on the fridge that said, Don't bother calling. You already chose him. The drive was mostly quiet. I played a playlist I hadn't touched in years. One full of songs Odessa and I used to dance to in our tiny kitchen back when we actually touched each other. Ember didn't comment, just rolled the window down and let the wind tangle her hair. Somewhere between counties, she reached over and placed her hand on mine. Not in a romantic way, just a human way. Like she was reminding me I wasn't invisible. We ended up at this weird little roadside motel in a place called Harper's Ridge. Never heard of it before. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and lost dreams. The kind of place where time felt paused. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the Welcome to Harper's Ridge map someone had left on the nightstand. It showed 3 streets, a lake, and a diner named Norma's. That was it. The whole town. That night, Ember crashed hard, curled up in a blanket burrito on the other bed. I lay awake again, eyes burning, mind racing. I kept asking myself, how did I let it get this far? When did I stop being a husband and start being furniture? How long had Odessa looked at me and felt nothing? Around 2 a.m., I checked my phone. For missed calls. All from her. No messages. No apologies. Just her name on the screen like it was daring me to care. And then came the voicemail. I hovered over the play button for a full minute before I pressed it. Her voice was shaky, rushed. Brent, I don't know where you are. You can't just vanish like this. Look, I know you're upset, but it's not what it looks like. That guy, he's nothing. It was a mistake. One mistake. Please just come home. We can talk. I still love you. I sat there numb. One mistake. Funny how all 4 of her mistakes had names, phone numbers, and custom emojis. And yet I almost believed her. Because that's what people like me do, the Brents of the world. We want to believe the person who broke us still has the tools to fix us. I didn't wake Ember. I just slipped outside and sat on the motel curb, watching a stray cat chase shadows under the parking lot lights. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt empty. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Because when I walked back into the room, Ember was sitting up in bed, wide-eyed, holding my laptop in her lap. And she looked scared. I think you need to see this, she said quietly. My stomach dropped. I stepped closer, and she turned the screen toward me. It was Odessa's email account, still logged in. Apparently, Odessa had been auto-syncing everything to a shared cloud folder, including messages, and images, and worst of all, videos. There they were, hidden in plain sight, labeled innocuously, April meeting, work notes, late shift recap. She didn't even bother to password lock the folder. What I saw next changed everything I thought I knew about betrayal. And it wasn't just about Odessa anymore. It was about Ember. Because in one of the clips, short, shaky, with muffled audio, Odessa was talking to someone off camera, laughing, whispering something about, "He'll never see it coming." And Ember's voice replied from behind the lens. At first, I didn't believe it. I stared at the laptop screen like my eyes had made a mistake. Maybe the voice just sounded like Ember's. Maybe it was an old video, or maybe it was doctored or something. You know when your world collapses in real time and your brain desperately clutches at any possibility except the most obvious one. That was me, sitting there in a motel room at 3 a.m., blinking at a grainy video that didn't care what I wanted to believe. But there was no denying it. That voice was Ember's. The lazy way she said, "He'll never see it coming," with a little smirk in her tone. Like this whole thing had been some joke I wasn't invited to. Odessa, half-naked, lounged on a couch in our living room. The same couch I once fell asleep on, holding a Valentine's card she never opened. She sipped from a wine glass and giggled like a teenager. At one point, she looked at the camera and said, "Honestly, if he ever finds out, he'll probably apologize." Then they both laughed. I felt the kind of cold you don't recover from. The kind that seeps into your ribs and makes your teeth ache. I backed away from the screen slowly, like it might explode. Ember just sat there, cross-legged, not even blinking. "You knew," I whispered. She didn't answer. "You knew the whole time. And you recorded her?" Still nothing. That silence? That was worse than any confession. Because it wasn't denial, it was calculation. She wasn't shocked that I found it. She was waiting. "Why?" I asked. My voice cracked embarrassingly. "What did I ever do to you?" Her eyes finally lifted to mine, and for a second I saw something flicker behind them. Not guilt, not fear. Something messier, something colder. "I didn't do it to hurt you," she said softly, as if that made it better. "I did it to prove a point." I stared at her. "A point?" "She uses people, Brent. She used me. She used you. She used anyone who made her feel wanted for 5 minutes. I just wanted you to see her for who she really is." "You filmed her cheating on me? To help me?" "Yes. That's psychotic. She's worse." I turned away. I couldn't look at her anymore. I felt like my body was full of lead, my lungs too heavy to breathe properly. I had run away from a liar only to land face-first into another web, spun by the one person I thought had been on my side. The next morning, I didn't speak to Ember. I packed my things quietly, checked out of the motel alone, and drove aimlessly for hours. I stopped somewhere near the state line. An old truck-stop diner with sticky floors and the kind of waitress who called everyone Han without looking up. I ordered pancakes I didn't eat and stared at the rain slamming the window. I thought about going home. I thought about confronting Odessa. I thought about calling my brother, but I hadn't talked to him in a year. He always said I let people walk all over me. I always thought he was just mean. Turns out, he might have been the only one telling the truth. Then something strange happened. As I was about to leave the diner, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just one line. "You're not the only one she fooled. Call me. Mark." I froze. Mark. That name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. And then it hit me. Odessa's ex. The one she said was toxic, jealous, and completely obsessed. I stepped outside into the rain, hands trembling, and dialed the number. When he answered, his first words were, "Brent, we need to meet. I think your wife and my sister have been playing the same game for years." Mark wasn't what I expected. I thought I'd be meeting some unshaven, bitter guy with revenge in his eyes, the kind of person who holds on to anger like a lifeline. But when I pulled up to the small park where we agreed to meet, he was already there, sitting under the rusted shelter with a half-empty coffee and a spiral notebook on the table. He looked calm, like a man who had already drowned in the chaos and now just watched from the shore. He didn't stand when I approached. He just nodded to the bench across from him and said, "Took you long enough." I sat. The silence between us was heavy, not awkward, just dense, like we both knew too much and were too tired to pretend otherwise. "She did the same thing to me," he said without preamble. "Different tools, same trick. Makes you feel special, safe, needed, then slowly cuts the wires." You're still standing there holding the balloon, and she's already in someone else's arms. I didn't say anything. He slid the notebook toward me. Inside were names, dates, notes, printed screenshots taped to the pages. It was like a case file, a decade's worth of breadcrumbs. Odessa's name appeared more than once. So did Ember's. This is insane, I muttered, flipping through. You've been tracking them? No. I've been surviving them, he replied. They're not just women who cheat. They orchestrate it. Like it's a game. Like they need the thrill of manipulation more than the relationships themselves. You sound like a conspiracy theorist. I probably did too. Until last year. He reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. Inside were printouts, old emails, old photos, private messages I recognized. Some of them were mine. Messages I had sent Odessa back in the early days. Sweet stuff. Insecure stuff. She had shared them with Ember. I felt sick. She mocked me. I whispered. I poured my heart into those messages, and she passed them around like party favors. Mark nodded. You're not the first, but maybe you can be the last. I leaned back and stared at the overcast sky above us. Trees swayed gently, completely unaware that two strangers were trying to untangle a shared past woven together by deceit. I don't get it, I said. Why do it? What do they get from it? Mark looked at me and his answer was simple. Power. That word hit hard. Because deep down I had always known Odessa thrived on control. Not in obvious ways. She never yelled, never threw things, but in the little moments. When I gave up friends to spend more time with her. When I changed jobs because she said my schedule was too unpredictable. When I stopped playing guitar because she said it was juvenile. Death by 1,000 suggestions. Then Mark said something that chilled me. They've done it before, Brent. Together. To others. Ember plays the confidant. The safe zone. The shoulder to cry on. Meanwhile, Odessa poisons the well. When the target, you, in this case, finally breaks, they flip the story. Make you look crazy. Then disappear. I was stunned. And the videos? I asked. The one Ember showed me. Was that part of it too? I don't know. But if she let you see it. She wanted you to. I sat there in silence, watching a kid kick a soccer ball into a chain-link fence nearby. The world just kept spinning, oblivious to the emotional sinkhole I was standing in. Mark stood up and handed me a flash drive. Everything I know is on here. Take it or leave it. But be careful, Brent. The moment they realize you're no longer playing the game, they'll change the rules. He left without another word. I drove aimlessly for hours again. Flash drive sitting like a loaded weapon on the passenger seat. I knew I couldn't go back to the motel. Not yet. Not until I knew how deep this went. But when I finally pulled into a rest stop for gas and checked my phone, my stomach dropped. 6 missed calls. 3 voicemails. All from Ember. The last one was just a whisper. I know where you went. You shouldn't have talked to him. We need to fix this before it gets worse. She sounded calm. Too calm. Like someone who wasn't panicking but planning. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even check into another room. I sat in my car at the far end of the rest stop, parked under a flickering light that buzzed like it was on its last breath. Just like me. The flash drive Mark gave me was still in the cup holder. Untouched. I stared at it for what felt like hours. Afraid of what might be inside and even more afraid of what it might confirm. By 3 a.m. I gave in. I plugged it into my laptop and waited. The folder was labeled Thread. All caps. Inside were subfolders named after initials M, L, R, T, B, W. And then at the bottom, BR. My name. I opened it. There were screenshots of texts between Odessa and Ember. Dozens. Possibly hundreds. Some from as far back as 2 years ago. It was like a digital diary of deception. Complete with timestamps, commentary, and photos of me that I never even knew existed. One of me asleep on the couch. One of me doing dishes. One of me smiling stupidly at the dinner table while Odessa looked directly at the camera. Smirking. Every image came with a comment. He still thinks I'm loyal. He cried again today. I almost felt bad. Wonder how long until he finally grows a spine. $10 says he'll apologize again when I forget his birthday next week. Let's see if we can push him further. It was psychological warfare, and I had been the oblivious, willing participant. But the worst folder was called Failsafe. Inside was a single video file. I didn't want to click it, but I did. It was Ember, sitting in my car. The same one I was in right now. She was filming herself. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes glassy but calm. If Brent ever sees this, it means I've either failed or told him too much. Maybe both. But he needs to understand this wasn't just about revenge or exposing Odessa. It was bigger than that. He was supposed to break. That was the point. Push him. See what happens. And maybe if he doesn't break, we'll know he was different. But if he does, well, then he's like the rest. She smiled at the camera. Not cruelly. Almost fondly. Sorry, Brent. You were the control subject. I slammed the laptop shut so hard the hinges popped. I was shaking. Not in anger, not in grief. In sheer, full-body confusion. A control subject? Was this some kind of experiment? A psychological study? A game? I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. Suddenly, the light above me buzzed twice and died. The parking lot went dark. I started the engine. I didn't care where I was going anymore. I just needed motion. I needed distance. I needed to get the hell away from everything. But I didn't even make it to the freeway before I saw it. A figure in my rearview mirror, sitting on the curb of the rest stop. Ember. Her hood was up and she was just watching. I hit the brakes too hard, tires squealing. By the time I jumped out of the car, she was already walking toward me. Calm, deliberate, like a scene from a nightmare I hadn't written but was being forced to live in. What the hell is this, Ember? I yelled. She didn't answer right away, just stopped a few feet in front of me and looked at me like I was the one acting insane. You weren't supposed to talk to Mark, she said. He ruins the process. What process? I snapped. The healing process, she said slowly, as if I was a child. The rebuild, the rebirth. You're supposed to go through the stages. Anger, despair, awakening. Then you either become like the rest or something better. You're sick. She nodded, not denying it. We all are, in some way. But I gave you a chance to see the world for what it is. To see her for what she is. That has to count for something. Did Odessa know about any of this? About the testing, the manipulation, the whatever twisted science experiment this is? She tilted her head. She started it. I felt like I was going to throw up. Then why show me? Why tell me the truth? Because I wanted to see if you were like the others. I thought maybe you'd surprise me. And did I? She didn't answer. I got back in the car and drove. I didn't stop to sleep. I didn't stop to eat. I just kept driving until sunrise burned through the clouds and I could pretend, for 5 seconds, that everything I'd learned had just been a dream. But then my phone buzzed again. A new message from Odessa. I know Ember got to you. Don't believe her lies. Come home. We can still fix this. She's done this before. Don't let her twist it. And just like that, I realized something awful. I no longer knew who the villain was. I didn't respond to Odessa's message. Couldn't. I was beyond trusting either of them at this point, and I knew damn well anything I typed would be thrown back at me. Twisted, dissected, turned into another thread in whatever psychological cat's cradle they had me wrapped up in. I needed proof, not just for myself, but for sanity's sake. I needed to know I hadn't imagined all of it, that I wasn't unraveling because I was weak or dramatic or too emotional. A phrase Odessa used every time I cried in front of her, which was more often than I'd ever admit out loud. Somewhere around the Colorado border, I pulled into a dusty roadside tech cafe. One of those weird little spots with 6 mismatched chairs, burnt coffee, and surprisingly fast Wi-Fi. I ordered something called a digital latte, which I'm pretty sure was just powdered milk with a USB symbol drawn in cinnamon, and booted up my laptop. The flash drive was still there, in my glove box. I slid it back in and opened the root directory again. This time, I focused on something I had ignored in the haze of panic and betrayal. A locked folder titled Observations of a Survey. 001 inch. Password protected, of course. I didn't know the password. But Mark had mentioned in passing that Odessa always used the name of her first dog as her security question for everything. I remembered the name only because she'd once drunkenly cried when she saw a commercial for flea collars. Cooper. I typed it in. The folder opened. Inside were pages and pages of typed logs. Observational records. Emotional reactions. Behavioral triggers. Like scientific notes. On me. Subject B. R. Demonstrates typical conflict-avoidant tendencies. Significant guilt response when confronted, even without fault. Internalizes rejection quickly. Classic loyalty over self-preservation behavior. Projection of redemption onto primary betrayer still intact after week 24. Every entry was signed E.R. Ember. My mouth went dry. This wasn't just some casual sisterly sabotage. This was structured. This was methodical. This was a project. One entry stopped me cold. Phase 3 nearing execution. Odessa will plant final trigger, emotional coldness plus blatant infidelity, to stimulate break. My role remains steady. Support/confidant/contrast figure. Will assess if subject resists collapse or seeks external validation through me. Prediction. Brent will remain loyal until exposed to layered betrayal. I read it again and again until the words blurred. They planned it. Every moment. The I don't feel like it dinner. The timing of Ember's offer to come with me. The motel. The laptop. The video. I wasn't a husband to them. I was a case study. A freaking test dummy in their toxic lab, pushed to the brink so they could take notes on how I cracked. I felt sick. I shut the laptop and stared at the cafe ceiling, where a single ceiling fan spun aimlessly. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the drive in half. But instead, I did what I always did when I didn't know how to act. I made a folder on my desktop titled Truth. I started backing up every file, every log, every screenshot. I emailed it all to myself. Then I emailed it to Mark. Then I created a burner account and sent a copy to a tech journalist I used to do landscaping work for. No message. No explanation. Just the folder. I didn't even care what happened next. I just needed someone else to see it. When I stepped out of the cafe, the sun had started to dip behind the hills. I didn't get into my car right away. I sat on the curb and watched as the world went on around me. Two teenagers arguing over whose playlist was better. An old man selling jerky out of a cooler. Someone's dog barking at its own reflection. Then my phone buzzed again. A text. From Ember. I see what you sent. Very brave. Very stupid. We warned you. Actions have consequences, Brent. It was the first time she'd used my name like that. Like it belonged to her. Seconds later, another message came in. From Odessa. Don't drag strangers into this. It's not what you think. You're spiraling. We can still talk. We can still fix this. And then, another one. Unknown number. No name. Just, you don't know what you've started. That was the moment I realized something truly terrifying. This wasn't just Odessa and Ember. There were others. I didn't respond to any of them after that. Not Ember. Not Odessa. Not the ghost number who tried to scare me. Instead, I drove. Not away from something this time, but toward it. Toward clarity. Toward peace. I don't know what clicked in my head, but I suddenly stopped feeling like a lab rat in someone else's twisted little game and started realizing I had the power to end it. Not with revenge, not with rage, but with something they never expected. Survival. The files I sent? They worked. 2 days after I hit send, the journalist. A woman named Callie, whom I hadn't spoken to since I landscaped her backyard for half the summer, called me directly. I thought she'd laugh or say she couldn't help, but she didn't. She said, Brent, this isn't the first time I've heard whispers about something like this. But this is proof. A week later, an article dropped. Names changed. Faces blurred. But the truth? It was out there. About emotional manipulation rings, social experiments cloaked in relationships, and how some people feed on vulnerability not out of malice, but curiosity, control, and a complete lack of empathy. Odessa and Ember didn't get arrested or canceled. That's not how real life works. But people started whispering. Quietly, carefully. They moved out of state shortly after, and for the first time in years, I stopped waiting for them to walk through my front door like nothing happened. And me? I started over. I deleted the old playlists, got a new number, went back to building patios, crooked, sun-drenched, splinter-prone patios. But now I listen to music while I work. I talk to clients. I laugh, even when it feels unnatural. I cry sometimes too, still, because healing doesn't happen in clean arcs. But I'm no longer embarrassed by it, because maybe I was never too sensitive. Maybe I was just surrounded by people who didn't deserve access to my heart. I've even started seeing someone new, slowly, carefully, someone who doesn't need to study me to understand me. And I told her everything, not because I wanted pity, but because I'm done hiding who I am. My name is Brent, and I am not broken. Thanks for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you made it this far, I'd love to know. Have you ever realized someone was manipulating you, but only after you walked away? Drop your story in the comments. Let's help others feel less alone. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more true stories that will make you think twice about the people closest to you.